Queen Solara stood on the balcony of the royal palace, staring at the vast sky above the planet Elissa. The stars sparkled in the distance, but to the queen, they only reminded her of the one star that had disappeared from her life, her daughter, Princess Lyra. Years had passed since the young princess vanished without a trace, but the pain in the queen's heart had never faded. Every morning, she woke with the same empty feeling, knowing her beloved daughter was out there somewhere, lost to the universe. The queen had once been strong, a leader of a powerful and respected kingdom. She had ruled with wisdom and kindness. But all of that had changed the day Lyra disappeared. Since then, Solara had ruled with a heavy heart, carrying the weight of a kingdom and the unbearable sorrow of losing her child. In the palace, the advisors spoke in hushed tones about the future, about the people of Elissa who were beginning to lose faith in their queen. But Solara could not hear their words. Her mind was always focused on one question. Where was Lyra? Had something happened to her? Was she alive? Did she even remember who she was? No one could answer her questions. The kingdom searched for years, sending teams of soldiers across the stars, following every rumor and clue. But every lead ended in disappointment. Lyra had simply vanished, as though she had never existed at all. Even the most powerful technology could not find her, and Solara's hope was slowly slipping away. On this particular day, as Solara gazed out at the horizon, a messenger entered the room. His footsteps were soft, but they echoed loudly in the queen's ears. "My queen," the messenger said, bowing low, "there is something you must see. A new lead has appeared. A human has found something that may help us." Solara turned sharply, her eyes filled with a flicker of hope. "A human? How can a human help us find my daughter?" The messenger stepped forward, holding a small holographic device. He activated it, and a 3D image flickered to life in the air. It was a picture of an old space relic, a piece of alien technology that had been found on a distant planet. The image showed intricate markings, but one symbol stood out, a symbol that had been linked to Elissa many years ago. The human who had discovered this relic claimed it could lead them to answers. The queen's heart raced. Could this be the sign she had been waiting for? The sign that Lyra was still alive? She had to know more. "Where is this human now?" Solara asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. The messenger hesitated. "He is on his way to Elissa. His name is Jason. He has experience in investigating ancient artifacts and has a reputation for finding lost things." Solara nodded. "Prepare a ship. I want to meet him at once." The next day, Jason arrived on Elissa. He was a man of average height, with short dark hair and a rugged look that spoke of years of hardship and adventure. He stepped off his ship, looking around at the grand palace that stood before him. Despite the beauty of the planet, Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of tension in the air. He had been to many places in the galaxy, but there was something different about Elissa. It was a world that carried the weight of loss. The queen's personal guards met him and escorted him into the palace. Jason had dealt with royalty before, but he had never been this close to a figure like Queen Solara. As they entered the throne room, Jason couldn't help but notice the queen's sadness. Her eyes, though regal and commanding, seemed clouded with grief. "Jason," the queen said, her voice smooth and controlled, "you have come to us with a clue that could change everything. But I must ask, how did you find this symbol? What makes you think it leads to my daughter?" Jason paused, his eyes meeting the queen's. "Your Majesty, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm just a man who's good at finding things. I found the relic on a planet called Zephira. It was buried deep in the ruins of an old civilization. But when I saw that symbol, something clicked. I've seen it before. It's tied to a lost princess, a story I've heard in old archives, whispers of a kingdom searching for someone important." Solara's heart skipped a beat. You've seen it before? Not in person, but the symbol was used by an ancient faction that had connections to your people. It was tied to royal bloodlines, specifically a princess who disappeared many years ago. The queen's eyes widened. Lyra. Jason nodded. I believe this symbol is part of the trail that leads to her, and I'm here to help you find her, if you'll allow me. The queen was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. Her mind raced. Could this be true? Could a human, someone from a distant planet, be the one to bring her daughter back? After so many years of searching, of losing hope, the possibility was too much to ignore. Very well, Solara said at last. I accept your offer, Jason. But know this, if you fail, you will not only disappoint me, you will disappoint the entire kingdom. I cannot afford to hope again unless I know it is real. Jason met her gaze. I understand, Your Majesty. I'll do everything I can. The queen nodded and turned to her advisors. Prepare the fleet. We are going to search the stars once more. This time, we will find her. As Jason stood in the grand throne room, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the queen's words. This wasn't just another mission. This was a chance to change the course of history, to bring a family back together after years of pain. But the road ahead would be difficult. The universe was vast, and Lyra's trail had been cold for too long. Still, Jason wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He had a feeling that this mission, this human quest, might be the most important one of his life. The sun was just setting over the capital city of Elissa when Jason stepped out of the palace, the weight of the queen's decision heavy on his shoulders. The fleet had already been prepared, and the queen had given the order to begin the search immediately. The mission felt real now. There was no turning back. Jason couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this was different. This wasn't just another job. This was about a family, a mother who had lost her daughter, and a kingdom that depended on them finding her. He walked through the streets of Elissa, the sound of his boots echoing on the stone ground. The people of the kingdom moved with quiet grace, their eyes downcast, as if they too carried the weight of the queen's sorrow. Jason had seen what grief did to people, but it was rare for him to see a whole planet affected in the way he was seeing now. Elissa wasn't just mourning the loss of its princess, it was mourning the loss of hope. As Jason made his way toward the landing pad where his ship awaited, he was joined by a group of Elysian soldiers. They were well-trained, loyal, and prepared for anything. Despite their professionalism, there was a certain tension in the air. The soldiers had little faith in Jason's ability to find the princess, especially considering the number of years that had passed with no success. Jason understood their skepticism. He wasn't from Elissa, he wasn't one of them, but he was here now, and he was going to give everything he had to this mission. As they approached the ship, Jason turned to one of the soldiers, a tall man named Rylan, who seemed to be the leader of the group. Rylan, Jason said, trying to sound confident. I know the odds are against us, but I need you to trust me. I'm not here to fail. Rylan gave him a sharp look, but his voice was calm. We have no choice but to trust you now. The Queen has spoken, and we will follow her orders. But know this, failure is not an option. The princess is everything to our people. If we don't find her, there will be no peace for Elissa. Jason nodded. He could feel the weight of Rylan's words, but he wasn't about to back down. The Queen's hope was now in his hands, and he was going to do everything in his power to make sure that hope didn't die. The ship was a sleek, advanced vessel, equipped for long-distance travel. Jason had spent years flying ships like this, but this one felt different. This wasn't just a machine to him. It was a lifeline. Every piece of it was a tool that would bring them closer to the princess. He climbed into the cockpit, followed by Rylan and the other soldiers. They were all silent, each of them lost. In their thoughts, their eyes fixed on the controls and the vastness of the sky outside. As the ship took off, Jason couldn't help but feel a surge of determination. He had made a promise to Queen Solara, and he was going to keep it. No matter how far they had to go, no matter how many obstacles they faced, he would find Princess Lyra. It was the only thing that mattered. The journey was long, and the vastness of space stretched endlessly before them. Jason piloted the ship with precision, guiding it through the quiet expanse of the galaxy. The stars outside the window seemed to mock them with their distance. They were so far away, yet so close. Too close to give up on, too far to reach without a struggle. Over the next few days, they followed every lead, every whisper they could find. Jason consulted the records he had gathered from the alien relic, tracing its origins back to a distant, forgotten system. The symbol he had seen on the relic appeared again and again in the data, like a shadow of the past reaching out across the galaxy. Each clue took them to a different planet, each one as desolate and forgotten as the last. Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of time bearing down on him. Princess Lyra had been lost for so long, and now, as they ventured deeper into the unknown, it seemed even more unlikely that they would find her. But Jason refused to let doubt cloud his mind. The Queen had believed in him, and he would believe in himself. "How much longer until we reach the next planet?" Rylan asked one evening as he stood beside Jason in the cockpit. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "We're almost there," Jason replied, his eyes focused on the coordinates. This planet, Krellon, was known for its ancient ruins. If we're lucky, we'll find something there that can lead us to Lyra. Krellon was a barren world, its surface marked with the scars of time. Once a thriving center of culture and science, it had fallen into ruin after a series of natural disasters. Now, only remnants of its past remained. Old structures, forgotten cities, and a few survivors living in the shadows of the past. When they landed on Krellon, the air was dry, and the ground was cracked and dusty. The team disembarked, their boots crunching on the barren surface as they made their way toward the ruins. Jason led the group, his mind constantly turning over the clues he had gathered. They had to find something, anything, that would point them in the right direction. The ruins were eerie, silent, and filled with the ghosts of the past. As they explored, they found signs of an ancient civilization, but nothing that directly pointed to Lyra. Frustration started to settle in. Rylan's words echoed in Jason's mind. Failure is not an option. But just as they were about to give up, one of the soldiers, a younger man named Rax, shouted from across the ruins. "I found something!" Jason ran toward him, his heart racing. Rax was standing next to an old stone structure, holding up a small object. It was a relic, an artifact much like the one Jason had found earlier. The same symbol was carved into it, worn by time but unmistakable. "Is this it?" Rylan asked, his voice full of hope. "It's a start," Jason replied, his eyes scanning the object. The symbol was clear, and beneath it there was a series of markings, coordinates. It was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Jason couldn't help but smile. "We've found our next lead. This will take us closer to her. I know it." With renewed hope, the crew boarded the ship and set their course for the next planet. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, the Queen's dream of finding her daughter felt possible again. The ship hummed softly as it traveled through space. The endless stretch of stars outside the windows a constant reminder of how vast the galaxy was. Jason sat in the cockpit, his hands steady on the controls, but his mind was elsewhere. Coordinates they had uncovered on Krellon had led them to another part of the galaxy, a small, desolate planet called Zaylor. It was a place that had once been a hub of scientific exploration, but now lay in ruins. Jason couldn't help but feel that, just like the people of Alyssa, Zaylor had been forgotten by the rest of the universe. "Are we close?" Ryland's voice came over the communication system, his tone as calm as always. "Just a few more hours," Jason replied, glancing at the map in front of him. "This is it. We should find something useful here, I'm sure of it." The Queen had sent them on a mission without a second thought, trusting Jason to find her daughter. But Jason felt the pressure of that trust on his shoulders. He had promised to bring Lyra home, and failure was simply not an option. If he couldn't succeed, who could? He wasn't a royal or a soldier. He was just a man who had found a clue, one small piece of a much larger puzzle. As they arrived on Zaylor, the planet seemed even more lifeless than they had imagined. The surface was covered with cracked soil and long-abandoned structures. No sign of life. No signs of anything that could explain how the people of Zalor had fallen into ruin. The few remaining buildings were little more than skeletal frames, their once grand designs lost to time. The team disembarked from the ship, the dry air hitting them as they stepped onto the planet's surface. Rylan, along with the other soldiers, moved quickly, scanning the area for any sign of danger. Jason's eyes, however, were fixed on the coordinates, the numbers etched into the relic from Krellin. According to the map, they had arrived at the ruins of an ancient research facility. It was here, Jason believed, that the key to finding Princess Lyra could be hidden. The group made their way toward the ruins, stepping carefully over fallen stones and collapsed walls. The air felt heavy, as if the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Jason's mind raced. The relic had shown them a hidden vault within the facility, an area that was not on any of the maps, an area that had been sealed off long ago. "Do you think we'll find anything?" Rax, the young soldier who had first uncovered the clue, asked. His voice was filled with hope, though it was clear he didn't want to get his hopes up too high. Jason didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for them to keep moving. The vault was close now. He could feel it. They reached the remains of what had once been the entrance to the vault. The door had collapsed long ago, but some of the markings on the walls were still visible. Jason studied them carefully. The same symbols he had seen before, the ones that connected Princess Lyra to this place. "This is it," Jason said, excitement bubbling in his chest. "This is where they kept the important things, the records, the research. It could all be here." Rylan, who had been watching Jason carefully, stepped forward. "What are we looking for, exactly?" "Anything that connects Lyra to this planet," Jason said. "It might not be much, but it's the best lead we've got." They began to sift through the ruins, carefully moving debris aside. After a few minutes, Rax called out. "I found something!" Jason rushed over, his heart pounding. Rax was standing next to a large metal container half buried under broken pieces of stone. The container was old, but the markings on it were clear. Jason knew immediately that this was the vault they had been searching for. "Help me with this," Jason said, motioning for the others to join him. Together, they lifted the container out of the rubble. It was heavy, but they managed to open it. Inside, they found a collection of old data chips and a few dusty books. Jason's heart skipped a beat. These were the records from the research facility. The data chips held the answers they had been searching for. "These have to be important," Jason said, holding up a data chip. "Let's get back to the ship. We need to analyze them." The group made their way back to the ship, the weight of the discovery settling in. As they prepared to leave Zalor behind, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were close. The data chips might hold the final piece of the puzzle, the missing link that would lead them to Lyra. They had come this far, and now it felt like they were on the edge of something big. Back in the cockpit, Jason inserted the data chip into the ship's computer. The screen flickered to life, and a series of encrypted files appeared. Jason frowned as he tried to access the data. It was locked behind a security code, but Jason wasn't about to give up. He had come this far. and he was determined to uncover the secrets hidden in these files. After several minutes of working through the encryption, Jason found the key to unlocking the data. His fingers flew across the keyboard as the files opened. The first file was a set of research notes from a scientist who had worked on Elissa many years ago. It mentioned a secret project, one that involved the royal family. The notes detailed experiments and research into intergalactic travel, genetic, manipulation, and more. The more Jason read, the clearer it became. This project had something to do with Lyra. The note suggested that her disappearance had been part of a larger plan, one that had been set into motion long before she had vanished. Jason's heart raced. This was it. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The files mentioned a hidden location, a place where Lyra had been taken after her disappearance. It was a place that had been wiped from history, erased from every record. But now, thanks to the research on Zaylor, they had the location. "Rylan," Jason said, looking up from the screen. "I found it. I know where she is." The stars outside the ship's windows were just a blur as Jason and his team made their way through the vastness of space. The coordinates Jason had uncovered were clear, and the location where Lyra had been hidden was closer than ever. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The chance to bring the princess home, to reunite her with her mother, Queen Solara. But Jason knew this wasn't going to be easy. The data they had discovered pointed to a remote moon, an uninhabited place that had been abandoned for years. Yet despite its isolation, it had been the center of an important secret operation. What Jason hadn't expected was the warning the files had given. Lyra's location was guarded by a group of enemies, individuals who had once been loyal to the Queen but had since turned against her. Jason's hands tightened on the ship's controls as they approached the moon. The black void of space felt colder now, heavier. They were entering enemy territory, and they needed to be prepared for anything. "Are you ready for this?" Ryland's voice came over the communicator, calm and steady, though Jason could sense the tension in it. Jason glanced at the others, Rax, who had been with them since the beginning, and the other soldiers who had stayed by his side. They all looked ready, determined, though the fear of the unknown hung in the air like a storm cloud. "We don't have a choice," Jason replied. "We get in, we find Lyra, and we get out. Simple as that." The moon appeared on the screen, its surface a patchwork of jagged cliffs and craters. Jason guided the ship down, his pulse quickening. As the ship touched down on the surface, a strange feeling washed over him. It was as if the ground beneath them was alive, waiting for something to happen. Jason turned to the team. "We move quickly. We don't know how many enemies we're up against, so stay sharp." They gathered their gear and disembarked, stepping onto the moon's barren surface. The air was thin, and the ground beneath their boots was cold and uneven. A sense of foreboding filled the silence. Jason could feel it in his bones. The enemy was close, and they were ready for a fight. The team made their way toward an old facility in the distance, a place that had once been a research center. The exterior was damaged, the walls cracked and broken, but inside, they hoped, was the key to finding Princess Lyra. As they approached, the first sign of trouble came. A loud crack of gunfire echoed through the air, and the ground around them exploded with dust. "Ambush!" Ryland shouted, diving to the side as another round of fire hit the ground near them. Jason didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground, pulling, his weapon from its holster, scanning the area for the source of the attack. The enemy was hiding behind the crumbling structures, taking shots from every direction. Jason could hear their footsteps on the ground, moving swiftly and silently. As they tried to surround the group, "Take cover!" Jason ordered, pulling Rax down behind a pile of rocks. The soldiers took cover, returning fire when they could. The battle was chaotic, with explosions echoing in the distance and the crackle of laser fire filling the air. Jason's heart was racing, but his mind stayed focused. They needed to push forward. Every second they wasted here meant another second that Lyra could be in danger. "Jason, look!" Rax shouted from behind cover. Jason turned, following Rax's gaze. Through the haze of smoke, he saw a figure moving inside the facility. It was a woman wearing a dark uniform. She was moving quickly, and her face was hidden behind a helmet. But Jason could tell she wasn't an enemy. They were here for the same reason he was. She was trying to escape. "That's our chance," Jason said, a determined edge to his voice. "Cover me!" He sprinted toward the facility, weaving through the fire as the enemy soldiers tried to shoot him down. The blast of gunfire seemed to grow louder, but Jason kept his focus on the woman. He could sense that she knew the way to Lyra. If they could catch her, they could find the princess. With a final leap, Jason dove through the broken door of the facility, landing hard on the cold floor. The woman was there, looking startled as she turned to face him. "Who are you?" Jason demanded, his weapon raised. "Where is Lyra?" The woman hesitated for a moment, then lowered her gun. "You're looking for the princess?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I know where she is, but you're too late." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "The enemy's guarding her. They've been preparing for this moment, the moment she returns." She looked past him, her eyes filled with fear. "They've been waiting for someone to come looking, and now that you've found her, you'll never get out alive." Before Jason could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. They were being surrounded again. The woman stepped back, shaking her head. "It's over." Jason's mind raced. He couldn't give up now, not when they were so close. "We're not done yet," he said, looking at her with resolve. "Where is she?" The woman took a deep breath, then pointed toward a door at the far end of the room. "Downstairs. But you won't get far." Jason glanced back at the team outside. "We don't have time to fight our way through," he said, his mind working quickly. "We need to get to her now." With one final push, Jason and the woman ran toward the stairs, taking them two at a time. The sounds of battle were still raging outside, but Jason knew they didn't have much time before the enemy arrived in full force. They had to find Lyra, and they had to do it now. The sound of Jason's boots echoed down the dark hallway as he and the woman raced through the underground facility. The walls were damp, the air heavy with the smell of rust and old technology. Each step they took felt like it brought them closer to something important, something that would change everything. "Keep moving," Jason urged, glancing over his shoulder. The sounds of the battle outside seemed to fade as they ventured deeper into the facility. The woman who had introduced herself as Amara led the way, her pace quick and steady. She seemed to know the layout of the place well, but Jason could see the fear in her eyes. She was afraid of what lay ahead. "How much further?" Jason asked, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Not much," Amara replied, her voice tight. "But there's no guarantee that we'll make it out in one piece. The ones guarding her? They're not just regular soldiers. They've been trained for this. They'll fight to the end." Jason's grip on his weapon tightened. He had already faced enemies, but nothing like this. The stakes were higher now, and the thought of Lyra being so close, just within reach, drove him forward. He couldn't fail. Not now. They reached a large door at the end of the hall, its surface covered in old symbols that Jason didn't recognize. Amara stopped in front of it, her hand resting on the handle. "This is it," she said quietly. "Lyra is behind this door. But be prepared. She might not remember everything. It's been years. And she's been through things that we can't even begin to understand." Jason nodded. "I'll handle it." With a swift motion, Amara opened the door. Inside was a dimly lit room filled with strange equipment and old, flickering screens. And there, standing in the center, was Princess Lyra. She was older now, but there was no mistaking her. The same face, the same eyes, but a different expression. She stood rigid, her body tense, her eyes distant. She didn't seem to notice them as they entered. "Lyra!" Amara called out, her voice full of hope. The princess slowly turned, her eyes meeting theirs. For a moment, there was no recognition, only a cold emptiness. But then, something shifted. A flicker of recognition, a flicker of something more. Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her eyes looked lost, confused, as if she couldn't quite remember who she was or where she was. "Lyra, it's me, Amara," the woman said, stepping forward. "You don't remember me, do you? I helped you when you were taken." Lyra's expression remained blank, her gaze scanning Amara's face, trying to piece together what was missing. "Amara," she repeated, as if testing the name on her tongue, but it didn't seem to mean anything to her. Jason stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle her. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I'm here to take you home. Your mother, the queen, she's been waiting for you. She never gave up on you." The words seemed to hang in the air. For a long moment, Lyra didn't respond. She just stood there, her eyes flickering with something, uncertainty, confusion, pain. It was clear she didn't know what to believe. "Home?" Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't have a home." Jason's heart ached at the sound of her words. He could see now that she wasn't just physically lost. She was emotionally broken. The years of being held captive, of being away from everything familiar, had stolen her sense of self. "You do," Amara said softly, stepping closer. "You have a home. You have a family. Your mother has been waiting for you every day. She never stopped believing that you were still out there." Lyra's eyes seemed to soften, but only for a moment. She looked at Amara, then back at Jason. "My mother," she whispered. I don't remember her." Jason moved closer, his heart heavy. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to remember everything right now. Just know that we're here to bring you home. And your mother, she's not the same without you. She needs you." Lyra stared at him, her eyes full of questions, full of doubt. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Jason felt the weight of her silence. He knew she was processing everything. Her past, her captivity, the family she had lost, and the future that might still be waiting for her. "Can I trust you?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jason's heart clenched. "Yes, you can trust me." Lyra nodded slowly, her hands tightening at her sides as if trying to steady herself. Then, without warning, she collapsed to her knees, her face buried in her hands. Jason rushed to her side, kneeling down next to her. She was trembling, her whole body shaking with emotions she couldn't control. "I'm so sorry," she whispered between sobs. "I don't know who I am anymore." Jason placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer her comfort. "You're Lyra, the princess of Elissa," he said softly, "and you're not alone anymore. You're coming home." Amara stood a few steps away, her eyes filled with tears. She had been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it was finally here, she could barely contain her emotions. Lyra was still broken, but she was alive, and that was all that mattered. Jason helped Lyra to her feet, his arm steadying her as she stood. "We need to leave," he said. "The enemy is still out there. We have to get you back to your mother." Lyra looked at him, her eyes still filled with confusion. "Will she still want me?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "She's waited for you all these years," Jason said. "She'll want you more than anything." With Lyra leaning on Jason for support, they left the room, stepping back into the facility's dark hallways. The sounds of the battle outside seemed to have faded, but they knew the danger wasn't over. They had to make it back to the ship, and they had to do it fast. As they made their way toward the exit, Lyra's steps were slow, but with every step, she seemed to regain a little more of herself. Jason knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that with time, Lyra would heal. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had brought her home, and that was all that mattered. The journey back to Alyssa was long and quiet, the ship gliding through the stars as Jason piloted it with calm precision. Lyra sat silently beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes occasionally glancing out at the empty space beyond. The weight of everything she had learned, everything she had lost, was still heavy on her mind. The once proud princess of Alyssa had been shattered by years of captivity, and now, as she returned to the home she barely remembered, she felt lost, uncertain about who she was and what her place in this world could be. Amara sat across from her, her eyes filled with concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly, trying to break the silence. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She was still processing everything, still trying to make sense of the emotions that were overwhelming her. She had felt broken, a stranger, to herself. But there was something comforting about being with people who didn't treat her as a victim. Jason, despite being a human from another world, had treated her with respect, never pushing her to remember things she couldn't. And Amara, though she had been a stranger before, was now a symbol of the life Lyra had lost. "I don't know who I am anymore," Lyra finally said, her voice quiet. "It's all too much. I was taken when I was just a child, and everything I knew was ripped away from me. Now I'm supposed to go back and be... Who?" Jason turned his head, slightly, glancing at her. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Coming home, being with your mother, that's all that matters for now." Lyra shook her head. "I don't even remember her. I don't remember Alyssa or the people who loved me. How can I just... go back?" Jason's expression softened. "You're not going back to something you've forgotten. You're going back to something that's waiting for you. Your mother is waiting for you. And whether you remember her or not, she'll remember you. She never gave up on you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She had spent so many years, believing she was alone, believing her mother had forgotten her. The idea of being accepted again, of finding a place in the world she had lost, was terrifying. But it was also something she longed for. Alyssa's welcome. As the ship descended toward Alyssa, the vast green planet below them seemed to shine with an almost welcoming glow. The planet, so full of life and beauty, looked like the home Lyra had once known. She had seen pictures of it in her dreams, but now, as she saw it for real, it felt strange and unfamiliar. The people of Alyssa, the palace, her mother. It was all distant, as if it belonged to someone else. But as the ship touched down and they began their approach to the palace, something inside Lyra stirred. There was a pull, a sense that this place was hers, even if she didn't know how. The palace stood tall against the sky, its towers reaching for the heavens. It looked the same as it always had in the royal portraits, but now it felt different, older, as if time itself had passed. Too quickly. Jason, Amara, and the soldiers were all focused on the mission ahead, but Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. As they disembarked, the air of Alyssa felt fresh and warm. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was it. She was going home. They were met by the Queen's personal guards, who had been waiting for their return. There was no grand fanfare, no celebration, but there was a quiet, powerful feeling in the air. The palace had been waiting for her, just as her mother had. "Where is she?" Lyra's voice was barely a whisper, but the tension in it was unmistakable. The closer they got to the palace, the more uncertain she felt. What if her mother didn't recognize her? What if she had changed too much? Amara placed a hand on her shoulder. Your mother has been waiting for this moment for so long. She's not going to turn you away, Lyra. Jason nodded, standing beside her. She's your mother. No matter what's happened, no matter how much time has passed, she's going to love you just the same. Lyra didn't say anything more as they entered the palace. The long hallways were lined with tapestries depicting the history of Alyssa, its kings and queens, its battles, its triumphs. The queen's personal chamber was at the far end of the hall, and as they approached, Lyra's heart raced. This was it. The moment she had dreamed of and feared for so long. The doors to the queen's chamber opened, and there she was, Queen Solara, standing tall and regal as always, but her face was filled with emotion. She looked at Lyra with a mixture of disbelief and joy, as if she couldn't quite believe her eyes. Lyra! The queen's voice trembled as she stepped forward. Is it really you? Lyra didn't speak. She just stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do. She had spent so many years imagining this moment, but now that it was here, she didn't know how to react. Was she still the same person her mother remembered? Would she even be able to love her the way she had before? The queen stepped closer, her eyes filled with tears. My daughter, you've come back to me. Finally, Lyra took a step forward. She reached out a trembling hand, and the queen, without hesitation, embraced her. The warmth of her mother's arms felt like the home Lyra had always longed for. She could feel the love in her mother's touch, the same love that had never faded, never stopped. In that moment, all the years of pain, all the uncertainty seemed to melt away. I don't know who I am anymore, Lyra whispered, her voice full of emotion. But I know one thing. I'm your daughter. The queen held her tightly. And you always will be. The room was silent for a moment, filled only with the sound of Lyra's quiet sobs and the soft, comforting voice of her mother. They had been apart for so long, but now they were together again. The past couldn't be undone, but the future was waiting for them. As they stood there, surrounded by the quiet of the palace, Jason and Amara watched from a distance, knowing that they had done what they set out to do. Lyra was home, and for the first time in years, the queen's heart was whole again. Lyra's journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. But with her mother by her side and the kingdom of Alyssa ready to embrace her, she finally felt like she was where she belonged, home.